All right. Thank you, beautiful people. I have returned again. It's the Troy Graham Experience, another journey and down the road of Troy Graham and his multitude of guests. And tonight we have a great one, Mr. Carl Snowden. Mr. Carl Snowden, who's a civil rights activist, author, motivational speaker, and so much more. He actually took on the daunting challenge of being my mentor when I came out the army. That's a challenge. But here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Snowden. Go ahead and go ahead and tell the people who you are, sir.
Well, first, let me thank you for the invitation to be on the program. Troy, I think these podcasts is very important. Gives people an opportunity to hear information unfiltered. And so I applaud you and others in the field of being podcasters because truth is one of these things that has to cut both ways. Sometimes truth can be unpleasant, but necessary. And a lot of things we're going to be talking about this evening deals with some truths that would not be broadcast, frankly, on network television, or even local television channels. Because, as you know, we're doing this during Black History Month. And one of the things we'll be going to be discussing is Black history and probably sharing with some members of your audience things that they may not even be aware of that have existed um, in our history. So, again, thank you for this opportunity to participate.
It's definitely my pleasure and honor to have you on, man. You've always been a good friend and mentor to me, so it's kind of paying it forward, paying it forward. I have something to ask you though. I see you have that shiny pin on your jacket there. You care to tell us what that pin is about?
Um, Maybe now, and it's been 5 to 6 years ago, we started something called a Caucus of African American Leaders. It started in Annapolis, but it's now on Maryland's Eastern Shore, Harford County. We're looking to open up a chapter in Prince George's County. And the Caucus of African American Leaders is a consortium of organizations and individuals who meet on a regular basis to talk about how we collectively can solve the problems that confront our community. If you were to use the example of some well-known people that your audience would know, President Barack Obama, Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, if you would ask people, are these three men intelligent? Most would tell you yes. If you would ask them, are there national leaders? They would say yes. But one of the things that most people would be surprised to know is that President Obama lived in Chicago. Minister Louis Farrakhan lived in Chicago, as did the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And they didn't meet on a regular basis. Three of them, three powerful black men in their own right, didn't come together and talk about how, as residents of Chicago, how, as black leaders, can we collectively work together to address the problems that our people are facing. So we don't want to make that mistake. If you know anything about the history, you will find that there have been just over and over again members of our community that have not come together to work together for the betterment of the larger community. And so we meet with Black elected officials, clergy, um, civil rights organizations, business people, labor, all once a month. And the purpose of coming together is to talk about what are the issues that's impacting our community and how can we collectively work together. We've adopted this model called unity without uniformity. We're not always going to agree on every issue. In fact, no human beings agree on every issue, but we have more in common than our differences. And so, what we try to do is emphasize what we collectively agree on, and then collectively we move forward to address the issues. There's a very simple concept. I grew up on a farm. I'm a native Marylander, but I grew up in a place called Davidsonville, Maryland, and I had an opportunity to witness how insects behave. And this may seem strange, but you'll see the point in a minute. If you watch a bumblebee and you look at a hornet, the bumblebee is much larger than the hornet. But what you can do with bumblebees is you can go into a bumblebee area and pick one bumblebee at a time, and you can kill each one of those bumblebees, and none of the other bumblebees will do anything. But if you go into a hornet's nest and you touch one of those hornets, the whole hornet's nest come at you. They have a sense of unity in the community. And what we want to do is get our people to be like a hornet nest so that when they put their hands on one of us, they have all of us to deal with. And there have been many times in our history that we've acted like hornets. And every time we've acted like hornets, we've changed the course of history. There's not a single time in American history when Black people became hornets that we were not able to change the course of history. Our problem is getting us to remain in that mode so that we don't fall back to being the bumblebees. And right now, as you and I are talking in Baltimore City, Marilyn Mosby is under attack. In Washington, D.C., Merrill Browser, who is the mayor of Washington, D.C., is under attack. In Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot is under attack. And we've just got to understand as a community, we've got to be like hornets. When one attacks people unjustly and unfairly, we as a community must respond, becoming hornets. So, one of the things the Caucus of African American Leaders do is we identify issues and then we mobilize, organize, and energize the community as a community to address these issues. And last year, 4 young people were in Ocean City, Maryland, and there were actually videotypes taken of police officers manhandling these people, these young people, and treating them harshly. Now, these young people were visiting Ocean City, and they came from Delaware and Philadelphia and places of that sort. And when we saw what happened to them, we actually organized a bus of people from Maryland to go to Ocean City to protest the way they were being treated. And the question that was asked is, why would you be concerned? You don't even know these young people. And our response was that they're part of our community, the larger Black community. And we made a difference. And so that's what the caucus is designed to do.
I, you know what? I was sitting back here listening, and you struck me with a couple of things: the hornet's nest, and just now when you said what happened in Ocean City to the young people,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And then somebody asked, "Why are you doing that for people you don't know?" We would not be sitting here today if somebody didn't sacrifice for people that they would never see. So that always irks my nerves when I hear that. But that's very powerful, man. That's very powerful. And you made a powerful, profound statement when you said, we have to stay like hornets because we get together and then we celebrate that one victory, but it's still a whole war out here. That's only one battle, right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why it's important that we meet on a regular basis. We meet monthly, we meet weekly. Every Monday morning, a group of people from around the state of Maryland get on a Zoom call, um, and we talk about issues impacting Black people around the state of Maryland. So we have used Zoom as a means of knowing what's going on, for example, in Cambridge, Maryland. And people in Cambridge, Maryland now know what's going on in Hyattsville, Maryland, or they know what's going on in Denton or some of the other places that exist. They all understand the importance for us to work together as a community to begin to address these important issues that's impacting on our community.
I agree, man. But I tell you the truth, I've marched, I've been to a lot of meetings. I'm in the mode now where I want to come up, I want to have a plan, right?
Hmm.
And and stick with that plan. We don't need any more leaders. Cause see, you could kill a leader. What you need is a purpose. If you kill the leader, then it's still that purpose. And the purpose is inside the soul of the people. So you can kill the leader all you want. The people still have the purpose and they can still follow the purpose, right?
Well, you do
So
need a
mhm.
purpose. There's no question about that. But There's no community that doesn't have leaders. Can you imagine if you look at any country in the world? Think of a China without a Mao Zedong, for example, or Cuba without a Fidel Castro, or Che Guevara, or de Gaulle in France. Leaders exist for a reason. They help to inspire people. But I think the point that you're making is that we cannot have a central leader, one person who, if something happens to that person, the whole movement comes to a halt. We have to have the ability to be able to move on. One of the mistakes that was made with Martin Luther King Jr., for example, who was assassinated in 1968, was we weren't prepared for that. Even though we'd seen Malcolm X get assassinated 3 years earlier, Medgar Evers before him, we just didn't realize that you could and would be assassinated in this country if it was in the nation's interest to remove you from public office or the public
And
square.
that
Right?
and that's actually very surprising to hear because you don't ever put anything past past an enemy or someone that you viewed as an enemy and all that. But you know what? That's exactly what I meant. I didn't say that we don't need a leader, but once once if something happens to him or her, it shouldn't kill the whole movement,
That's
right?
right. That's
It
right.
should not. The purpose should be so strong that someone else could step up and say, okay, let's keep pushing forward. And it continues like that. And it keeps going like that. Because the truth is, we're the only people that march and protest still. Why? Why are we still marching? We're the only ones that still celebrate black first. Like over here in the NFL, they still complain that there's only one black coach. And instead of them asking these guys, fighting for their rights in the NFL, me personally, I feel that we should work on getting our own league. You don't, I was raised like this. You don't go where you're not invited. You don't go where you're not wanted. So if they don't want you, they'll leave.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it's important to understand is our development as a community. Remember, this is not a movement that got started yesterday, right? This is since we arrived on these shores in 1619. And to get to become what I told you earlier, to be a hornet means you've got to begin to organize people, get people of like conscious, be able to get people to see the same thing. And because of the different stages that we've had now, development, not everybody's at that point that you just described, but that's a goal that we need to eventually get people to. Meanwhile, while we're working on getting that goal together, there are some things that we have to do, and we've got to use every tool that we have in our toolbox. Marching is just one tool, voting is another, um, economic withdrawal, boycotts is still another. There are many, many different tools that we need to use, but we've got to use them strategically so that we can be effective in what we're trying to do. Um, Here's an interesting statistic. George Floyd was murdered in May of 2020. The whole world saw him murdered. As a result of his murder, there were these sweeping laws that were passed in some parts of the country, including Maryland, which passed sweeping police reform. The Washington Post just did a report. You want to take a guess how many black people have been murdered in this country since the George Floyd uh, episode?
I don't know, but I can tell you it's been many.
It's been over 1,071 people, black people, all over the country have been murdered
Wow.
by police officers. And it goes to show that we've got to have a plan that is strategic and systemic. You know, one of the things that people make the mistake of in Brunswick, with a black jogger, the three white men that were convicted in that case, people were obviously very, very happy that they were able to get these men rather, convicted of the crime. And many made the mistake of thinking that justice has arrived. Well, it is true that in that case, they were able to get a conviction, but there are many, many cases similar to that all around the country that don't get the notoriety that they got. And the results are quite differently. So we've got to put together a systemic plan that will ensure that people get justice, regardless of whether they can mobilize tens of thousands of people around the country if they have been unjustly murdered, as in the case of the jogger.
Yeah, it's a shame that it took. You said how many? You said 1,700 or 1,000? What
Yeah,
people have
so
been murdered since
it's
then?
1,000. It's been 1,071 people, black, who've been murdered since George Floyd. That was in 2021. 1,071 people, black, murdered by police officers from around the country.
Oh Lord.
Mhm.
I just think that I guess it's not a guess. I just think it's a mindset that you need to have that says that we don't need you and we would just build with our own people because there's no group of people that then start out by building with their own first. I don't know why we have this mindset that we have to build with people who don't want with a group of people or groups of people who don't want us to build with them.
Well,
And
Troy,
it's always this. Uh-huh.
yeah, just think of it this way. Since our inception in the country, racism and slavery and poverty affects people differently, right? Not everyone has the same experiences. So there have been people. George Jackson once said that men who go to prison, only two kinds of men leave prison: broken men and dead men. And so we have a lot of broken men, frankly, that have come back into the community. And so we have to be able to repair these men. Frederick Douglass, whose birthday we celebrate today, said it's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. When you think of what he means by that, we've got to get our kids to understand who they are, to be able to understand what their potential is. If you have been taught all your life that you're nobody, you're nothing, you can't do anything, and you believe it, you won't have to worry about those people who believe that building any kind of institutions. They can't see it, they can imagine it. And so when you give them these pieces of history that they just don't know, for example, most people think that Harris, the current vice president of the United States, a black woman who's married to a white man, who have white stepchildren, the press said that she was the first to bring a blended family into the vice presidency, meaning that she had children, a biracial kind of situation there. And it's just not true. Um, there's a man named Richard Mentor Johnson who was a United States senator from Kentucky in the 1800s. He married a black woman, had two black daughters. If you ask the average historian or the average person who matriculated to college or even high school, did they know that the ninth vice president of the United States was married to a black woman? They will tell you they didn't know that. Neither did they know that Martin Van Buren, who only served one term, he was the eighth president of the United States, lost his election because his vice president refused to disown his daughters and his wife. That's the kind of history that is not often taught. And I might add that for people who don't know this, um, Martin Van Buren's vice president, Richard Johnson, was not the first vice president to have black children. That honor goes to, a dubious honor, I should say, go to the third vice president of the United States. The third vice president of the United States was a man who wrote these words: "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all people created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights." His name was Thomas Jefferson. And what most people are not aware of is that Thomas Jefferson, the third vice president of the United States, impregnated his 16-year-old mistress or his slave, a woman named Sally Hemings. So once you understand the history of America, the true history of America, you begin to understand the contradictions that exist. And you begin to see that people of color have played very vital roles in this country. The problem is neither white people nor black people know the true history of this country. Most people have no idea, for example, that the White House was actually built by slaves, literally built, the White House that we see today. Nobody knows if I told you the name of a man named Madison Washington. And for those who are watching the program tonight, they should Google who Madison Washington was. What they'll discover is that Madison Washington actually freed more slaves than the so-called great emancipator Abraham Lincoln. And he did it. He did it 40 years before Lincoln even put his pen to the Emancipation Proclamation. Uh, Madison Washington, a black man, was able to liberate more than 130 black slaves. He led a rebellion. And the reason he was able to free more black people than Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, signed that proclamation that applied to people in the Confederacy, slaves that were in the Confederacy. Well, the Confederacy never recognized Lincoln. That would be like someone coming to your house and telling you what you can have in your house. They didn't recognize Lincoln's authority to free anybody. But this guy, Madison Washington, actually did free people. And thanks to knowing your history, you're able to put yourself in a position to know some things that generally the public don't know, particularly black people.
I want to thank you for all that history, man. I was sitting here saying, wow, because I didn't know until you got to Jefferson, I didn't know any of that history. You know that?
Yeah,
I didn't know any of that.
most people don't know. For example, if you ask, here's another example. If you ask people, when was the first black FBI agent hired in the United States of America? Typically, people say, well, it must have been in the 60s, right after that civil rights movement. Nope, they would be wrong. The first black FBI agent was hired in 1920. Now, why would the FBI be hiring somebody in 1920 who's black, given a history of racism and discrimination, etc.? The answer to that is because of a man named Marcus Garvey. When Marcus Garvey was moving his movement, the United Negro Improvement Association, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, um, the FBI had to infiltrate his organization. It was all black. And the only way they could infiltrate it is they had to hire a black man in order to do that. And the black man they hired became the first FBI agent. And his job was to infiltrate Marcus Garvey organization, which he did, and he was responsible for Marcus Garvey being arrested and eventually deported from the country. Um, that's the kind of history that they don't teach you in school, but it's true. And if one was to Google it, they would see it very quickly. That's what happened. People are not aware of the fact that just recently the revelation came out about Malcolm X. There's a man named Ray Wood who was a member of the New York City Police Department. This is 1960s. Um, his job was to infiltrate Malcolm X's organization, which he did. And he was there the day that Malcolm X was assassinated. He was actually on the site. He was a black man that did not realize that he was being used for the purpose of setting up someone else to take the fall for Malcolm X's assassination. This guy, Ray Wood, looked like a man named Thomas Hagen. They could pass as twins. He didn't know Thomas Hagen, but the FBI knew who Thomas Hagen was. And so they sent this police officer to be on site. And so many people would later testify that they saw Thomas Hagen, who really was Ray Wood, um, at the site of Malcolm's assassination. And Thomas Hagen actually went to jail for Malcolm X's assassination. He wasn't even on site. Now they've discovered, of course, that he was a fall guy, and he and a couple other people were vindicated, but they spent almost 30 years in jail after Malcolm X's assassination, all because of the FBI and the New York Police Department.
Yeah, yeah, that's a power, of controlling the narrative, basically. That's how
Absolutely
you deflect off the main story and say, okay, we caught his killer, even though they know that's not his killer, right?
right. The person who
And
controls the narrative is it's extraordinarily important to control the narrative. That's why it's important for us to tell our own stories. And as you know, I wrote a book um, called "Some People Watch Clocks, I Watch People," and in this book, I try to identify various things that have happened in my lifetime that I've observed, because it's important that we control the narrative. For many, many years, I was told that the reason why Rosa Parks was arrested was that she refused to give up her seat to a white man. Then in 1984, I had an opportunity to meet Rosa Parks in person. And I was there when a white reporter asked Mrs. Parks, "Why were you arrested?" And her response was profound. She said she was arrested because she refused to give up her dignity. Now, that's different than giving up your bus seat, or refusing to give up a seat on the bus. She understood that this was much more bigger than a bus seat. It was about her dignity. And so if you don't control the narrative, somebody else will. If you don't tell your own story, somebody else will. And so we want to make sure that our people begin to tell our own stories so that we be able to determine our reality. Because if you don't determine it for yourself, somebody else will. And they'll teach your children things that are just not true, but they won't know it. And if you don't know it, you too will believe many of the lies that are told about Black people.
Absolutely. Now, you touched on the book that you published. You want to give
Yeah,
some more give some more details on the book, sir?
yeah. The book is available. You can do it on Amazon, or you can contact me directly, and of course we'll send you the book. But the book has a lot of information in it. One of the things, when you pick up this book, you'll discover that I wrote a essay for the Capital Gazette newspaper predicting that Donald Trump would not get reelected. And this is almost a year before his defeat at the polls, because there were certain signs that to me indicated they would not get elected. Most people, or many people, do not know that I worked for WJC TV years ago. And so I met Oprah Winfrey when she was just Oprah. And so there are things about Oprah Winfrey that I know, and I share experiences I had with her. She's also one of the persons that's in the book that I write about. Oprah Winfrey used to work in Baltimore City. She was the first African American woman to be brought to WJZ TV, and I was there, and I saw the racism that she experienced firsthand. And I saw her go from being a news anchor, which is what she was hired to be, to becoming a co-host with a program called People Talking with a man named Richard Sher, um, because Jerry Turner, who was then the major anchor for WJZ TV, just didn't like Oprah Winfrey, and made it clear that he did not want her to be his co-anchor. So those kind of stories are in this particular book, along with other experiences and people I've met over the years. I met James Baldwin, had an opportunity to interview him. Alex Haley, had an opportunity to interview him. Before we came on air, you were talking about Dick Gregory, the late Dick Gregory. I met Dick Gregory, had many conversations with him about many things. So the book has these kind of pieces of information that people may find useful. And again, the book is available. And if you can't afford to buy the book, it's also available at the local public library. They've actually purchased copies of it to make it available to the public.
Okay, share the title of the book again, please.
Some people watch clocks. I watch people.
Hmm, I like that.
Hmm.
How did you?
And by the way, if you watch people, you can learn a great deal by just paying attention. Too many people do not pay attention. You'd be surprised how many people don't pay attention to the environment, don't pay attention to what's going on around them. Um, People watching this program tonight, for example, if they would do something that they don't normally do, they'll see a world that they had not experienced before. The average person walks down any street in America, just look straight ahead. They never look sideways. They just look straight ahead. But if they start looking up, just look up, they will discover things that they didn't realize that's been there all that time. One of the things they're going to discover are cameras. America has more cameras than Russia, the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union. Cameras are everywhere in America today. And most people have no idea. But if you look up and pay attention, you start to see all these cameras that exist. If you have a cell phone, which most Americans have cell phones, if you ask most people how does a cell phone work in America, they can't tell you. All they know is they turn it on and dial the number. They don't understand what the satellites mean. They don't understand that if you got a cell phone, you can be traced anywhere in the world once you have a cell phone. They don't understand that there's no privacy if you got a cell phone or you got a computer like we're on today. You lose your privacy. But people don't understand how technology works. So they got what they call a digital print. So if you have a cell phone, you have credit cards, you have bank cards, all those are digital um, imprints you leave or footprints. And so the government now has the capacity to be able to pull data on you and your whereabouts. The guy named Edward Snowden, uh, who happened to be white and have my last name, he was with NSA. And most people don't have any idea why he uh, was accused of being a whistleblower. And the reason he was accused of being a whistleblower, because Edward Snowden revealed for the first time, the, most people thought the only people who the government kept under surveillance was criminals or people engaged in criminal conduct. And what Edward Snowden said was that every American has a file on them, a dossier. And this became true during the pandemic. You know, there were people who got what they call stimulus checks in the mail and stimulus checks that were sent to their bank accounts. And they asked the question, how did government know what my bank account number was? They didn't mind getting that $3,000, but it never dawned on them that they never gave the government um, information as to what bank they dealt with and all of that, but the government had it. And they were able to put those checks in people's banks. And so people who think that they have this privacy, it's gone. It's been gone for a long time.
You're on mute. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah. So I'm just explaining that, you know, people who have these people who have these files created by the government don't even realize these files exist, but they do. And every citizen has a dossier on them, and they don't even realize it.
That's true. I mean, from the biggest, smallest person to the biggest person, everybody knows your business, right?
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah. Now, I wanted you to touch on a little bit more about your family's history and civil rights and all that.
Be happy to. Let me give a little biography that people may not be aware. As I mentioned, I'm a native Annapolitan. I grew up in Annapolis. Um, and years ago, I read a book called Autobiography of Malcolm X. And Troy, it literally changed my view of the world. When I was given the book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, to read, I was in the 10th grade. And we were to give the report and then read two chapters of the book. And then my job was to give a um, oral report on this book. So when I went home, um, my goal was just to read 2 or 3 pages, to be honest with you. And what I was going to do is go the next day to class and just fake it that I had read the book because I really had no interest in the subject matter. Then I picked up the autobiography of Malcolm X, and the first chapter is called Nightmare. I literally could not put that book down. It's the only book I read from cover to cover in one setting. And it had such a profound impact on me that at the age of 15, it changed me fundamentally. Malcolm X um, inspired me to learn a lot more about my history, but who I was, who Black people were. I learned a great deal from him. So I became very active in the community. And at the tender age of 15, the FBI um, opened up an FBI file on me, a file that would last for 7 years. Unbeknownst to me, I would later sue the FBI and be able to show that the FBI had engaged in illegal conduct, like the one I just described to you. But following this revelation that the government was spying on me, I was able to, uh, at the age of 22, hire an attorney named Alan Liggum. He's a local Annapolis attorney, civil rights attorney. And we sued the FBI. And I got copies of my FBI file at the age of 22 and won a monetary settlement against the FBI as well. But as a result of that, I got a great understanding of what government can do and will do to people who they consider to be dissidents. I would later go on and run for public office. I served on Annapolis City Council for 3 terms. Would later go work for the first woman to get elected as county executive in Anne Arundel County, Janet Owens. Served in her cabinet for 8 years. Then I would go on and become the first director for civil rights in the Office of Maryland Attorney General. Um, so I've got a vast amount of experience in both elective and public office. And on top of that, I ran my own business. I had a private company called Snowden and Associates, which dealt with specialized in civil rights issues. So my background has been one of civil rights, and I've been actively involved in the community for over 50 years. And so I have some sense of where we are in this country, um, and where I think we're going as a people.
Now, you know what? We have about 7 minutes left because I know you said you're on a tight schedule, so I don't want to hold you too long. But wow, there's a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I do want to thank you, number one, for your time, and I want you to speak on the park that you had dedicated to the people who lost their lives. Was it the Capitol, or was it, or was it the Gazette newspaper?
Right, it was the Capital Gazette newspaper. One of the things that the caucus of African American leaders understand very clearly is that there's no greater right that we have in this country than the right and then our civil rights. And Dr. King understood that very, very well. Had it not been for mass media um, and the First Amendment, the rights of people to exercise the First Amendment to speak out, it's doubtful that the civil rights movement would have been as successful as it eventually became. So in 2018, some members of the Capital Gazette newspaper, both staff and journalists, were murdered um, by a man who did not like what they had written about him. And we decided as an organization that we wanted to make sure that we created a memorial, not just to the victims, but to the greater issue, and that is the issue of democracy and the right of people to have the freedom of speech. Um, so we raised money, $300,000, and built a memorial called the Guardians of the First Amendment. It's located in downtown Annapolis. It's not our first memorial we built. We built a memorial here in Anne Arundel County. We built the only memorial to Martin Luther King Jr. that exists in the state of Maryland. We built a memorial to his late wife, Coretta Scott King, which is in Edgewater, Maryland. And then we built the Civil Rights Foot Soldiers Memorial, which is in downtown Annapolis. And it's a memorial to the men and women who went on the March on Washington in 1963. And Troy, the reason for building those memorials is because we wanted to have those people who will follow us know what Black people have done to make America better, not bitter. And it has been an incredible journey. One of the things that I would leave your audience with is that we are probably going to have the most consequential election in our lifetime. Um, this election that's coming up in 2022, uh, African American people have to take very, very seriously. There is an element in this country who, quite honestly, do not like to see, have not liked the success that Black people have made across this country. And there's an attempt to turn back the clock. In 2040, if everything goes normal, in 2040, people of color will make up a majority of America. Think of that for a second. In 2040, people of color will make up a majority of America. That's why there's such a great backlash to the Latino community and the immigrants that's coming to this country. Most of them are people of color. If you go to any mall in America, any mall, you see more interracial dating than you've ever seen in your lifetime. White supremacists and racists and bigots, they know what's coming, and they hate that, and so they're going to make every effort to prevent America from becoming a majority uh, country of color, where the majority of people will be people of color. If anybody been to Brazil, we're going to be the next Brazil in this hemisphere, and they know that. And so there's a great effort to prevent that from occurring. And so we have to get people to understand the urgency of this upcoming election. It is not a joke. Those people who stormed the U.S. Capitol have an agenda, and their agenda is to try to make America a white nation. And the only way they can make America a white nation is they've got to remove people of color. And for people who don't think that that's possible, all they have to do is read history. There are Native Americans, tribes that used to exist that no longer exist in America because of genocide. You cannot find them. So we need to, as a community, understand our history, get prepared for what's coming. And I must tell you, Troy, I've enjoyed this conversation and look forward to getting invited back, perhaps in the near future, so we can have a continuation of discussion. Because I really think it's important for people to understand what specific steps they can take. And one of the things they can do beyond the normal stuff of registering to vote, learning to read your history. There's a great book called Born in Blackness. I would strongly recommend to people who are interested in our history to read. The book I've written again is called Some People Watch Clocks, I Watch People. It's available. And to have people begin to at least hear other views and other opinions of what's going on in the world. And I think if we do that, as I started off saying earlier, just come together and begin to talk among ourselves about what we collectively can do, we can make a huge difference. Troy, this issue is not about you and me. It's about our grandchildren. You had shared with me you've got grandchildren, and so do I. And I'm looking for what the future will mean for them and grandchildren like them all over the nation. So we've got to make sure that we create a better world for them, because that's what's going to make the biggest difference.
Absolutely. And thank you once again. Before you leave, I want you to give out your social media and where that book could be found, whether it's on Amazon, eBay, or on everything on social media. But just give tell the people where they could reach you, and where you're speaking, and just everything.
Well, thank you. I'm doing a Facebook. Anybody can reach me on Facebook. Um, in Worcester County on this coming Monday, I'm going to be in Worcester County speaking before the Worcester County Democratic Club, Women's Club in Ocean City, Maryland. I'm doing a number of speaking engagements, including one in Deal, Maryland. In fact, the best way to do this, if people would simply go to the Facebook or to the Caucus of African American Leaders website, they have a listing of all the speaking engagements I'm going to be doing and events that we're involved in. But again, I want to thank you, Troy, to have this opportunity to be part of the Troy Graham experience. It's been a great experience.
Well, thank you for coming by, man. You definitely made you. I could say that you're the most elegant speaker I've had on. Everybody I've had on was much like yourself. They were able to just open up and speak. But you've always been a well spoken and purposeful. Very purposeful. That's why I didn't have to ask too many questions. I
Thank you.
had a bunch, but I didn't have to ask too many. But look, I'm not gonna hold you up. I understand you have a next meeting to get to, so get there safe, and I'll send you a copy of the show, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. And if you have any more information you want to give me about the books or anything like that, I'll go ahead and post that. Okay.
Thank you. And I look forward to you joining us on March 11th for the 34th
Mhm.
annual Martin Luther King Jr. Awards Dinner that's going to take place at the BWI Weston Hotel. As you know, because of the pandemic, we had to reschedule it from January, but it will take place on March 11th, BWI Weston Hotel, 6 o'clock p.m. And I'm looking forward to you and your guests joining us as we celebrate one of the great African American leaders of our time, Martin Luther King Jr.
Be my pleasure, man. I'll be there. I'll always be there. Always be there, man. As much as you've helped me and stood by me and stuff, I can't say no to you. So I'll
Thank you.
definitely be there, brother. All
Thank,
right.
thank you again.
You have a blessed night, man.
Bye bye.
Oh, that was another episode of the Troy Graham Experience. Just a little history about myself and brother Carl Snowden. There, we go back 30 years. He was my mentor and he was my guidance counselor, and so forth. When I came out the military, my goal was I'd heard from a bunch of people that, well, I've talked to friends and so forth, and they were telling me, yeah, you've always been good with English and you're outgoing. You should teach. So one friend was already on their way to Japan to make $75,000 a year, and they were going to take care of their own room and board over there. It comes with the job. Now, mind you, that was in 1991. How far does $75,000 go in 1991? It goes a long way. And then I said, okay, I could do that. I could teach English. I speak English. I should be able to teach it. So I go into his office and, well, I go to the front desk at the college. It was a junior college. I go to the front desk. And I said, look, I need some help. I need to put together a schedule. This is what I'd like to do. They're like, okay, well, we're going to direct you to Mr. Snowden. When I first looked over there, I thought it was a white guy, but no, it was. So I go in his office, and this brother has a bow tie, a suit, and he's eating bean soup and cabbage, right? So we sat down and talked, and I explained to him, I want to go to Japan. I want to be a teacher and make $75,000 a year. He said, you know what? That sounds like a job. That's the job you want to have for the rest of your life? And I was like, not really, no. I just need to make some money. He's like, yeah, but you're going to be in a different country. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to be making $75,000. Yeah, regular 20-year-old, 21-year-old. And he's like, okay, take a deep breath. Now tell me what you want to do, Mr. Graham. And I'm like, I want to go to Japan and make this money. He's like, no, no, no. That's that's what you want to get paid for right now in this moment. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I never thought about it because I could have easily got my English degree, went to Japan and got stuck over there and hated the damn job. Right. But luckily he was like, we did a breakdown of my life, my wants and needs and my likes and so forth. And come to find out he was like, with your personality and your skills, you are more well vested for advertising and marketing. Sure enough, he got me into some advertising and marketing classes and I excelled. And I was on my way to being going into corporate America. I was on my way, man, because of that one conversation I had with the Honorable Carl Snowden. He's a very subtle but powerful man. I've known him, like I said, for 20 years. His name means something out here in Anne Arundel County. And it's an honor for me to call him mentor and friend, because he's there's not one year that's gone by where he hasn't invited me to the Martin Luther King dinner or taken any of my calls or anything like that when I need something or need a favor, which I owe him 1,000 favors actually. But he's a good guy and I respect him. And I'm happy to have a show like this where I could bring him on, and it's not any, confrontation about politics and being pro-black or anything like that. Nah, it's a Troy Graham experience. And for those of you that came by, I thank you so friggin' much, man. Thank you. It means a lot because tonight, having him on meant something to me. It did. I don't know if you can hear that in my voice. You know what? Having my last couple of guests on meant something to me because we all go back about 30 years. Everybody knows everybody's mother. In fact, we just go back. I just was blessed that God put me in a position to know some people that are much more accomplished than most people, like if you want to call them that. But to me, they're just family, and it's not going to stop. I'm going to just keep having people on. I'm going to take some time off from doing the interviews and just start doing talk shows again about different subjects. But for right now, I want to do the interviews because I think there's a lot of information out there in the world and a lot of people that have things to share. So much to share, and I want to be one of those podcasters that puts it out there in a sense where it's easy to digest and it's not too overpowering or anything, because a lot of times we get this information and it's like, wow, that was a lot to take in. And he gave a lot of history real smooth. It wasn't like overpowering or anything like that. It was very, very smooth and precise. And matter of fact, every guest I've had on so far was pretty much like that. Jelani, he gave his information very well, his story very well. Dominic, wow, we go back a long way. He gave his information well also, you know. Terry, that nut, he gave his information well also. Just there's a lot of information right there. So it's still more to come. There's still more to come. I'm looking at getting some entrepreneurs on right now, as you may not know, but by the time I have them on here, you're gonna be like, I want to buy their product. And why don't I know them? Well, you'll understand why you don't know them and why you really definitely want to support them after you hear them speak on the Troy Graham experience. Because that's what I do. That's what I do. Everything will come. I'm just building towards something. I'm building towards something. Same thing over there with Major Keys. I'm build key with no S. I'm building towards something. Right? Yeah, I don't have time to you may see me less and less and less on social media. I just don't have any time for the foolishness no more. Nah. I was holding my granddaughter the other day, and I was like, "Good Lord, you have my eyes. You have your daddy face, which is basically just a lighter version of me, but you have my eyes." And I was like, when he said that, we're building a world for them. That this is brother called Snowden, and yeah, and what world are we leaving for them? I was back here shaking my head. I was like, yeah, yeah, that's very powerful. What kind of world are we leaving for them? Because I can't go everywhere and speak my piece. I get cut off. I get told I'm a fool and this, that, and the third. So you're not gonna hear my voice a lot unless it's over here, Major Key maybe, or maybe I'll pop in and call on Coach's show. But I'm kind of tired. I'm not gonna give my voice away no more unless I'm really in the mood to talk about whatever subject matter. But overall, it's just time to start building and taking care of what's important. Now I'm still gonna have my fun. Now don't think that I'm not a one-sided person. I'm a very multifaceted person. But it's time to do something. That little child looked me in the eyes and she made me melt, man. My little granddaughter with her big, big, pretty self. But as they say, everything must come to an end. So the show has come to an end, and we're going to leave you tonight with a song speaking, asking the question if Jah is by my side, why should I be afraid? Why should I be afraid of the pestilence that falls by night. Huh? Why should I be afraid? That's the name of the song. So hopefully you like the outro because it's the same as the intro. There it is. Bless up yourself, one and all. Thank you for the most giving me the most precious thing you own, which is your time. I appreciate it. And I will be back again. Today is Monday. I'll be back on Wednesday with Chop Chop Corley, but not as a boxer, as the chef, Chop Chop Corley in Chop Chop's Kitchen on the Troy Graham Experience. I will see you on Wednesday when we talk to Chef Chop Chop Corley, the king of the kitchen. Respect.